Hello, and welcome to the Indy Author Podcast. Today, my guest is, once again, me. When I wrapped up the last episode before I took my December podcast sabbatical, I had planned to start out 2026 with a fantastic interview with Laura Good about the importance of self-advocacy. But so much happened in December that I decided to do one more solo episode to report back and then return to regularly scheduled interview programming next week. You'll find video of this episode at the Indy Author on YouTube and a full transcript at theindyauthor.com/podcast. Before we dive into my update, I would like to send out a big thank you to my Patreon patrons, including Sinyi and Heather, who became patrons in December of 2025. And I would also like to thank Heather and Jeff, who each sent me 3 coffees via Buy Me a Coffee. It is listeners like them and you who make this content possible. Having some time set aside for something different than my usual routine was so helpful, and here are a few of the things that I accomplished in December. First, I made some changes to my direct sales approach by taking my And Can Your Suspense shorts, ebooks, and audio off PayHip in favor of Curios, and I had 2 reasons for doing this. First, whenever I made a sale on PayHip, my business manager, Melanie, who handles all the finances for William Kingsfield Publishers, would have to reconcile multiple resulting transactions that came into QuickBooks, and the time it took her to do this often cost more than I made from the sale. On Curios, as with other third-party retail platforms, the royalties come in chunks, which is much easier from a bookkeeping point of view. Second, I was getting tired of contending with the fact that the only discoverability I ever got was by sending people there, pretty much exclusively people who already knew about me or my books. And I wanted to focus on a platform like Curios, where someone who is browsing for suspense or thriller or mystery or nonfiction for writers might find my books. And I'll have more to say about the benefits of discoverability on third-party platforms in just a bit. Just as an FYI, I know that explaining to buyers about the platform fee that enables Curios to pay creators 100% of the list price is a little awkward, and I am lobbying them to provide a feature that would enable creators to cover the platform cost so that the cost to the buyer would be the same across all retail platforms, while I believe still resulting in a higher royalty on Curios, and I will keep you apprised of my progress on that front. Back to PayHip. In addition to moving the short story ebooks and audio off PayHip, I also took down my large print novels because I didn't want to have to maintain inventory to cover the few copies I ever sold. And I'm happy to suggest that readers buy those books on bookshop.org, where a percentage of each sale goes to support indie bookstores. I am still thinking of completely retiring my PayHip store in favor of Curios for ebooks and audio and directing readers to bookshop.org for all print, maybe with the offer that if they send me a photo of them with one of my print books, I will send them a signed book plate. Let me know what you think about that idea. The other thing I need to accommodate is that one of the benefits I offer to Patreon patrons and newsletter subscribers is 20% off purchases at my PayHip store. And at the moment, at least, that's not an option on Curios, although I will lobby for them to add it, and so I'm looking for another benefit that I can offer those folks. Ideas always welcome. On the consulting front, last year, my consulting rates were $175 for the first 1-hour meeting and $125 for subsequent 1-hour meetings. And in the last podcast episode, I announced that those rates would be going up to $195 for the first 1-hour meeting and $145 for subsequent meetings. I had originally priced the meetings differently because I anticipated that I would be spending more prep time on the first meetings with a client, reviewing the material that they had sent me, checking out their books, checking out their website, their social media presences, and so on. However, I found that even after the first meeting, I generally had a lot of prep to do for subsequent meetings, and so pricing them differently really didn't make much sense. And since I had already announced $145 as the subsequent meeting rate in the last episode, I didn't want to set an hourly rate higher than that, so all consulting meetings are now $145 per hour with no premium charge for the first meeting. What else did I have planned for December? Well, originally I had intended to spend most of my spare time in December trying to get Lizzie Beller Book 6 ready for advanced readers, and I got a bit sidetracked on another project, more on that in just a moment. So I didn't get as far as I had hoped, but I am pretty close. So the book is about 90,000 words, and it has about 90 chapters. I prefer short chapters when the story is moving among several point of view characters, as is the case with the Lizzie books. And at the time of this recording on January 4th, I have completed the pre-reader advanced polish edit on about 20 of the chapters, and I am still pushing hard to have the book reader ready before I leave for vacation on January 9th. I also finally launched my long-anticipated, by me, collection of Anne Kinnear suspense shorts, A Year of Kinnear, 12 suspense shorts from the world of Anne Kinnear, which is now available on all major online retail platforms in ebook and print. I slightly underestimated the time that I would need to spend on the launch of that connection, but what I didn't factor in at all is that since I had added an illustration and an author's note for each of the stories in the collection, all 12 standalone shorts would have to be updated with the extra content on all the retail and distribution outlets, so that's taking quite a bit of time. And here I'm going to take a moment to thank the wonderful Angelique Fawns for taking on a task that she didn't anticipate for the holiday season, which was writing a foreword for the collection. So thank you, Angelique. In addition to a lot of unanticipated updating and content uploading for my shorts, what did I spend my time in December on? I launched a whole new platform, From Expertise to Authority. This is my first offering that is targeted beyond a writer-specific audience, although I do believe that it will be valuable to many writers, especially in nonfiction. And the purpose of the new platform is to help experienced professionals exploring second act careers or sidelines transform their expertise into recognized authority through a proven 3-stage framework of relationship building. That framework involves expertise-based relationships, which involves building credibility through written content, personality-based relationships, which involves building deeper human connections through conversational content, and authority-based relationships, which involves building recognized authority through direct engagement. And the goal of this framework is to enable these experienced professionals to generate income, expand their influence, or stay meaningfully engaged in their field. In December, I rolled out a bunch of new channels and content in support of From Expertise to Authority. In addition to my website, which you'll find at theindyauthor.com/authority, a revamped Matty Dalrymple YouTube channel focused specifically on From Expertise to Authority content, a consulting offering, a new podcast, From Expertise to Authority, and a Substack at Matty Dalrymple. I'm actually hosting the podcast through Substack, and I'd like to send out another big thank you to Angelique, who is not only one of my first From Expertise to Authority podcast guests, but also clued me in on the ability to host the podcast through Substack. And I chose Substack over my own website for my written content for the same reason that I'm prioritizing Curios over Payhip for my direct product sales, because of the benefits of discoverability. If someone is looking for content related to professional development or career transition or second act career or setting yourself up for success for a sideline or side hustle, they're more likely to find me on Substack than they will on my own website. And before starting to post on Substack, I did confirm that Substack claims no rights to posters' IP. Another reason for my experiment with Substack is that when I've spoken with writer audiences about sharing nonfiction content, I always got the question about Substack, and I was only able to address those questions through secondhand information, which is never my preference. So I figured I should really try it out for myself. And honestly, I dipped my toe into Substack a bit unenthusiastically because I really wasn't excited about taking on the care and feeding of another platform, but I am really enjoying it. It is social media for thinking people. It provides the outreach that I think social media originally promised, but allowing for much more depth and actually productive interactions with the people who follow you. The episodes of the From Expertise to Authority podcast will be a combination of solo episodes and interviews with professionals who have made that journey. And when those guests are writers, I will be sharing those episodes here on the Indy Author Podcast. And in a future episode of the Indy Author Podcast, I'm going to share my repurposing strategy across the From Expertise to Authority podcast and Substack and presentations and an upcoming book, because I really couldn't launch a whole new platform without a heavy focus on repurposing. As I mentioned, I believe that what I'm doing over at From Expertise to Authority, while it is not specific to writers, will be a benefit to writers, especially nonfiction writers moving from a first or main career to a second act or sideline career. And I thought that the best way to share with you what I will be doing over at From Expertise to Authority is to share my first podcast episode with you here. These episodes are bite-sized. This one is about 7.5 minutes long. And if you prefer it in text form, it is a quick read over on Substack at Matty Dalrymple. And next week on the Indy Author Podcast, we'll resume our regular interview format with a conversation with Laura Good about the importance of self-advocacy. And that is an episode that you won't want to miss. Laura is a writer with an MFA from Columbia University, a poet, a film producer, a writer of nonfiction that has appeared in BuzzFeed, New Republic, New York Magazine, and elsewhere. And she teaches at Stanford University, where she has been honored with the 2025 Walter J. Gores Award, which is Stanford's highest award for excellence in teaching. She was recommended to me as a guest by the wonderful Jeff Elkins of The Dialogue Doctor, And his recommendations are always top-notch. I am looking forward to re-listening to that conversation, and I know that you will enjoy it as well. And if you would like to revisit any of the information I've shared in this episode, a full transcript, not just a summary, is available at the Indy Author. And now, the first fast episode of the From Expertise to Authority podcast, How Real-World Needs Shaped a Universal Framework. Hello, I am Matty Dalrymple, and welcome to From Expertise to Authority, where we examine how you can build your professional presence for a sideline or second act. More resources are available at theindyauthor.com/authority, and that's Indy with a Y, and on YouTube at Matty Dalrymple. In this first episode, I'm going to be talking about how real-world needs shaped a universal framework, what my consulting work taught me about the progression from expertise to authority. And if you'd prefer to read the article this episode is based on, you'll find that on Substack at Matty Dalrymple. For years, through my podcast, books, and consulting, I've helped professionals build their presence. I've written about podcasting for authors, speaking at conferences, building platforms, and creating community. I've guided writers and entrepreneurs through the tactical steps of expanding their reach. But it wasn't until I started working with a broader range of consulting clients, professionals from outside the writing and publishing world, that I saw how all these pieces fit together as an integrated system. What I've been teaching as separate skills were actually progressive stages of a single journey, the path from expertise to authority. This podcast will explore how professionals can intentionally build their presence through 3 stages of relationship building, whether they're launching a sideline venture, planning a second act, or simply looking for new ways to share what they know. I've spent my career accumulating expertise across what seemed like separate domains. A multi-decade career in the corporate world at Siemens Health Services and QVC taught me project management and how to navigate company politics. My master's degree in organizational dynamics from the University of Pennsylvania gave me frameworks for understanding how people and systems work together. As the author of a dozen suspense novels and 5 nonfiction books for writers, I developed expertise in the writing craft and the publishing industry. As host of the Indy Author Podcast since 2016, I learned the power of conversational content. As a speaker at conferences and a consultant, I discovered how to position expertise for direct engagement. As principal of William Kingsfield Publishers, I learned how to build and run a business. I knew these experiences informed each other. The business lessons I learned as a corporate project manager shaped my ability to run my own publishing company. The organizational dynamics framework helped me understand how to work with authors and industry professionals. But I saw these as distinct areas of expertise, related certainly, but separate. I didn't see what connected them as an integrated whole until I started discussing them with some of my consulting clients. When I first established my consulting services, I anticipated that I would be working with writers, probably early in their author careers, to help them navigate a path that would result in the publication of a book. And although those writers did come to me, I saw another trend among my clients, professionals who had built up expertise, often outside the writing and publishing world, who wanted to understand how they could disseminate ideas, often already captured in a book, to a larger audience. Oftentimes, their desired audience was different from the one they had targeted in their first or primary careers. Sometimes the audience still needed to be defined. But the common thread was that they had knowledge to share, but no roadmap for sharing it. Let's give this composite client a name, Avery. As Avery and I talked, I found myself inventorying the options I myself had explored, both in my own career and in my books. Have you written any articles on the topic? Thought about podcast guesting, speaking at professional conferences? Consulting is an option if you want to work one-on-one. I realized that although the details of the professional lives of my clients differed, the options that were open to them and that I had pursued myself were consistent. But those options felt like a la carte menu items. Was there an overarching framework that linked them in a holistic way? I started mapping it out. The pathways I'd been using and teaching, articles, books, podcasting, speaking, consulting, weren't random choices. Each one served a specific purpose in building professional presence. But what was that purpose exactly? My articles on writing engaging villains, framing a story, or selling direct to readers weren't just articles. They were expertise made visible through written content. They established credibility and created a foundation that proved I knew what I was talking about. My podcast, The Indy Author, wasn't just a podcast. It was expertise made personal through conversation. It also added voice and personality to the credibility I built through writing. People heard not just what I knew, but who I was. My speaking and consulting engagements weren't just one-off events. They were opportunities to demonstrate and apply my expertise through direct interaction with an audience that could benefit from my knowledge. Once I looked at these activities as stages rather than as separate options, the pattern became clear. Things weren't or shouldn't be separate activities, they were progressive stages of relationship building. First, I made my expertise visible through written content, establishing credibility and creating a foundation. Then I added personality through conversational content, creating human connections that went beyond the written word. Finally, I demonstrated authority through direct engagement, positioning myself as the expert people sought out for guidance. Each stage built on the one before it. Each stage deepened the relationship that transformed expertise into recognized authority. Working with Avery to build his pathway to authority revealed the system I'd been operating within all along. The framework provided structure along with flexibility. It worked because it was progressive and intentional, not because Avery had to pursue every pathway, but because he could choose the stages that served his specific goals. When Avery and I looked at what he wanted to achieve within this context, his particular path became clear. He wanted influence, not income. He wanted to share insights, not build a consulting practice. So we focused on podcast appearances to allow potential fans to hear from him directly, and speaking to solidify his position of authority on that topic. If Avery had instead been looking for income from a sideline profession, that would have recommended a different pathway. The framework worked precisely because it wasn't prescriptive. It offered a map, not a mandate. As I worked with more Averys, another insight emerged. This framework wasn't just for authors and publishers, it was for any professional with expertise they wanted to share, whether they were launching a sideline venture, planning a second act, or simply looking for new ways to apply what they knew. I'd spent years helping authors build platforms, but what I'd actually been doing was helping professionals bridge the gap between expertise and authority. My consulting work revealed the pattern. This podcast will explore the framework that my work with the Averys helped me see. It's about the journey from expertise, what you know, to authority, what others recognize you for. It's about 3 progressive stages of relationship building that close that gap. It's about matching those stages to your objectives so that you're not doing everything, just the things that matter for your goals. Do you recognize yourself in Avery's story as an expert with knowledge to share but no roadmap for sharing it? In the episodes ahead, we'll explore the gap between expertise and authority, why it exists, and how to bridge it. We'll walk through each stage of relationship building in detail, and we'll look at how to match pathways to objectives. If you'd like to support developing a personal pathway from expertise to authority for yourself, please check out my consulting service at theindyauthor.com/authority. And if you're an event organizer, I'd love to share with your community a framework they can use to develop their own path. And if you'd like to get in touch, just drop me a note at Matty@mattydalrymple.com. Thank you for listening.